Welcome back to That So Second Millennium, episode 143. So, in this episode, we're very happy to bring you an interview between myself and Scott Gazzoli of the Causing the Effect podcast. So, Scott is, I'd say he's kind of over in what you might call guru culture, which really kind of fascinates me and has for a long time because I want to do better things with my life than I have so far. And, whether that's something that floats your boat or not, that's obviously a major component of modern American and Western culture is, what do we do with the obstacles that we have? How do we get over them? So, in some sense, that's a psychological problem and therefore a scientific problem. But of course, in a lot of senses, it's also a spiritual problem. And that's really what our interview winds up being about. So yeah, it was inspirational for me, and I hope it is for you. So here's our episode where I interview Scott Gazzoli of Causing the Effect. Thanks. All right. Welcome back to That's So Second Millennium. We are very pleased today to have Scott Gazzoli of the Causing the Effect podcast on today. So hopefully we're going to talk today about some fitness, some psychology of achievement, and just wherever philosophically the conversation takes us. Welcome, Scott.
What's going on, Paul? Thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, no, this is great. We're really great. Really glad to have you on today. And so what's been going on in your life?
Man, you know what? Ever since COVID got back to normal, everything kind of subsided. My life has kind of been taking a little turn here. And it's like, it's funny, during COVID, everything was so easy for me. Like, I know people were having a terrible time, but like I was kind of honed in here and I started, looking more just deeper as far as my psyche goes. So you get into a little bit of Carl Jung, you get into some shadow work, let's say. But what really started getting me was I realized I'm kind of a book nut. I know most people listen to this but like for a kid from Brooklyn to be so into books, it became such a thing. And for me, I started looking really deep into existentialism, the 7 principles of
Sure.
existentialism. And I would say, and for people who are yeah. So for people who are a little unfamiliar, there's the constitutional principles and then the actualization principles. The constitutional principles of existentialism: mystery, mindness, freedom, and anxiety. And then the actualization principles: authenticity, integrity, and sincerity. And I would say the actualization principles really kind of just touched my soul in a way: authenticity, integrity, and sincerity. So I've been on a path of unveiling this piece of life for myself through my podcast, through reading, through talking to people like yourself. And it's been like such a joy, but by no means is it an easy thing being your most sincere version of yourself, being the most authentic version of yourself. But that's kind of like the whole purpose of what I do, why I live my life. And I guess that overarching mission is, I feel like if we all lived to be a little bit more integrity driven, more sincere, more authentic, we would all be in a much better place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is incredibly difficult. And it's so easy to go through life, fooling yourself. I mean, deceiving yourself about what you're actually doing and what you're actually about. So, giving us a little bit of sort of background on where you come from, like, in terms of your early life and things like that led up to this being a point of great interest for you.
Yeah, I would say if you looked at me in my 20s, I was not the kid that would be into this stuff. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. I haven't left. My life, as Paul's childhood, I got to learn on our episode, a little wild, a little traumatic, I guess. We all have our kind of scars, but my father disappeared when I was 7 years old. Didn't know what happened until, you kind of figure out, oh, okay, the last name's Gazzoli. We're families in the mafia a little bit. My father disappeared. I went to the witness protection program. So I remember when I was like 11 or 12 years old, my mother saying, you're not Scott Gazzoli Jr. anymore. You're now Scott Gazzoli. So I was like, oh, shit, I get stuck with the name. And my father kind of disappeared. And he came back and forth into life. And, when I was 2 years ago during COVID, I met it's crazy. I met my grandfather for the first time, who was in jail for 22 years. And I didn't know what happened. I didn't know it was connected. And he told me the whole story. We met for dinner and it kind of gave me some closure. He said, your father put me in jail for 22 years along with your uncles. So he's a rat. And it gave me closure more or less, because you're always thinking as a kid, it's more on you. It's you're the problem. You're not worth it. And I would say even having and having those conditionings from from 6 to 10, those are like your trying times. And I always feel that I connect more with the younger men. My podcast has become a kind of like, a little bit of Jordan Peterson esque, where I really feel like I'm there to help the guys who don't have somebody to look after, because I never had that. And living life, I think people always say, like, find your figure and then kind of mimic off of it. But there's no figures who are super into fitness, super into the mind, super into all this. I'm kind of creating it as I go. And I really,
Sure.
I went through my 20s kind of like how we were describing. And I would say the values, I didn't even know what values were. You're kind of living unconsciously off of what society tells you, off of what your parents tell you. So, my mother gave me the choice, you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, and finance. Which one do you want to be? I said, what's the least amount of years in school? Let me get my BS in accounting and finance. So double majored, got a MBA, spent years in the hedge fund world, and,
Yeah.
you're making all this money, and, it just felt 27, become your Italian kid, build a house, marry the pretty Italian girl, nice Italian family. It sounds perfect, right? And then I did that, and I get to there, and,
Right.
28 comes, and you're like, this feels worse. Like, what the hell's going on, Paul? And some destructive qualities kind of
Yeah.
popped up, and I
Yeah.
knew that I had to reset myself. So when I turned 30, started the podcast, started doing stand-up comedy, things that they just feel right. And ever since I started living that way, it's changed the way I process things. It's changed the way I aim my life now, where it's not so much living off of the values of what society thinks is okay. It's living off the values of what I think is okay. And I think that's the best
Mhm.
part of life. It's not like there's no meaning. It's the meaning that you choose to give it. And when you give it the meaning that you really feel deep down, it becomes a lot more vibrant, a lot more colorful.
Yeah. Yeah. It does have to be authentic. I mean, then you get into the entire question: is there, beyond society, is there something outside yourself that does have an actual claim on you? Yeah. By society's rules. Not a great way to go forward. Just try to intuit what other people want you to do. Or I guess in Brooklyn, it sounds like they'll tell you what they want you to do, which in the Midwest is not so much a thing. You have to guess for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, it's all we're in such a weird time. At least I was part of this generation that we didn't have the phone in our hands as kids, and then as you grow up, you get the phone in your hand, and you see how
Yeah.
everything is making an impression on you, and some for the good and some for the bad. So that's the issue I've kind of struggled with, is like, once you get to this place of awareness, like I'm up 3:30 in the morning every day. I meditate for about an hour and a half, and I feel like it lets me see the different levels of life, from a psychological view, from a philosophical view, from an economical view, from a physical view, from a judgmental view, from like all these different pieces.
Yeah.
And it's like, shit, I could see everything, but I can't fucking change it yet. And they always say this is the hardest part of meditation, where like you're in that observance stage, but you can't quite change those conditioned seeds inside of you. So it's like, I wish I never knew this shit. Just give me the blue pill again, and let me go back to being unconscious in the matrix. So it's interesting, and
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah.
we're at this point in life where there's this modern wisdom popping up from like the Stoics. There's practical science, and then you see this big surge of the New Age spirituality coming in. And I think the next step is consciousness in some way. Like, consciousness has always been a thing for me that I'm so intrigued by. Like, what is this going to look like in 100 years? Like, and I get nervous, and I feel like the philosophy, the psychology, the mind work is needed to balance out the technology, the social media, all these different pieces that we're seeing. Like, even I was telling Paul, I've if you have an addictive personality like myself, and you have the gambling apps now, I see it in kids. It's like, if you're 15, 16, 17, 18, you're no match for these things. So I get nervous with attention spans, with focus, and just picking up
Yeah.
bad habits, honestly.
Yeah. It's so easy to do. So easy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you have that great big hole inside of you and something has to fill it, vacuum, you say, and said, and I've said that for a long time. Um, yeah. Yeah. That's rough. That's rough.
And with that whole
So
Paul,
where does
well,
fitness? Oh, sorry.
no, with
Yeah.
that whole, you
What are you
mentioned,
saying?
because yeah, I was reading The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, and that feeling of lack, that feeling of that hole that we all try to fill. That was a question I was actually thinking about to ask you. Like, how have you dealt with that hole? Because we all have it, and it's natural, and it's kind of part of just being a human. But there's that divine side of ourselves that I feel like is capable of filling it in a way. How have you dealt with that hole, so to say?
Gosh, yeah, I didn't expect to get the turnaround, but I mean, it's very much a work in progress. I mean, there's I've gotten a layer or two now. Who knows how many? Limitless number. Turtles all the way down probably, but yeah. Um, I mean, the whole it takes many different forms. I mean, for me in particular, because of what I went through and what we talked about on your episode. um, I mean, I was just talking to someone the other day about like I'm way in here is how I feel, and the rest of the world, other people are all way out there. And that's sort of a manifestation of what I mean by the whole. That there is contact between the two, and so I remember a fairly pivotal moment in my life was about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when I read something. I mean, it's something that had been copied from Instagram onto Facebook. Something enlightenment, just talking about dissociation. I'm like, what do you mean that's abnormal? This whole sense of like not being connected to the real world. That's how I spent my entire childhood and most of the time since. So okay, I have some more work to
Mhm.
do. So how does that? But you know, conscious thought is by no means all there is, but it's kind of what we have to work with, what we can actually work, choose to work with. I mean, so some of it has been simply taking time, and I should do it every day, and I don't do it every day. Um, I learned from a therapist in St. Louis about he called it dyadic resourcing. It's kind of a way of adjusting EMDR. So I literally just I do a butterfly hug and I tap on my shoulders with my middle fingers, alternately, and I think about it's weird. I've written, who knows whether it'll ever get published, but I wrote this kind of short story, because I could take a class, I could take a fiction writing class at the end of college, and I wrote a story about two geologists who go out to Wyoming, and it starts out as coming of age story, and then they trip over a body and hijinks ensue. But this figure, so it's a old codger and a graduate student, and the graduate student is the point of view character. But the old codger, like I've come to realize, talking to people, like this is the figure that I need to fill the hole. This is the father figure that I need. I'm seeing him, and so now I can focus on so what the guy in St. Louis recommended that I do is to focus on him, and I don't I use other images as well. I use the Blessed Virgin. Um, I try to imagine myself being embraced by Jesus or something, and trying to put myself in that position, like you were saying, 6 to 10 years old, that crisis point in life. Um, every point in life could be a crisis point, but that certainly it sounds like it was for you as it was for me. Going through life, being actually kind of a pudgy kid, and having terrible self-image, and feeling like I was not the son my father wanted, and all this stuff. Yeah, all this feeling like there's something that everyone else has that I don't have. I mean, which is a great satanic illusion. But and realizing that that's not, reminding myself over and over and over again that that's not the case, and it makes a difference gradually. But I mean, that's the whole trap of I can't just think it and have it fill, that hole once and for all. I've got to, I spent how many decades building this habit of thought, habit of feeling, you know, building the opposite habit, short circuiting it, channeling it into another path is going to take a very long time.
No, I'm with you, man. And that same thing for me. And even like, I'm lucky enough to do okay in the material world
So,
and like all these other things. And it's just it's interesting to hear your perspective. Thanks, Paul.
yeah, no, and I was going to ask it, how does fitness fit into this for you?
Sure. So fitness was like the first kind of step into actually changing because I think you need it's hard like people wait to have a certain feeling. Like I want to wait till I'm ready to do X and then I'll do it. That's not quite how it works. You need to do it and then you get the belief. It's
Oh
like a
gosh,
it's a,
yes.
self-fulfilling paradox in a way. So that little game, if you don't know it, and you're unconscious to it, you'll just sit and become inactive. So I was similar to, it's funny, that's why I was saying with you, with being pudgy, I was 260 pounds at one point. If you looked at me in my teens, and I
Yeah.
was eating McDonald's 4 to 5 times a week. It just wasn't, I was just, my mother's mother passed away, and that was the one who cooked. And my mom was like, oh, McDonald's will work. So we go to the doctor, the triglycerides are through the roof. And the doctor said, listen, you're going to get diabetes. You got to start looking into this. This was 17, 18. And, me being me, obsessive, I, said, okay, I want
Yeah.
to lose 100 pounds. You lose 100 pounds, you just kind of starve yourself. And then like, that was I was always so worried about what other people thought about me. I never even wanted to go to a
Yeah.
gym. And when, I had so much
Oh
anxiety that
yeah.
I would like be shaking as I'm like bench pressing, like the weirdest things. And I just sat there, I said, what, this just doesn't feel right. Like I have to kind of walk through this. So start showing up to the gym every day. You say, okay, I want to lose weight. And then you say, okay, I want to put on a little muscle. And I would say, being 32 now, I really don't care about the vanity of it. It's more just to be healthy, but I am in pretty good shape and I take it very seriously. But like that, when you actually change yourself, when you actually, wow, I changed how I look. What else could I change? This was around
Yeah.
24, 25. I started, wow, you could change stuff in the mind. Maybe is this possible? That's when I got introduced to Tibetan Buddhism and Hinduism. My cousins are very academically driven, Oxford philosophy grads, and they said, listen, just try this book. It was called Mindfulness in Plain English, from a Wall Street guy who had a nervous breakdown and ended up becoming a monk, all this good stuff. And that just really hit me. And I was the type of person where I couldn't even do mindfulness for 30 seconds, and now it's just a full branch
Yeah.
of my life that is absolutely needed. Like when I don't do my work, my team at work is like, oh, Scott didn't meditate today. And I think people try to look for, if you're coming from like a Western view, it's always like, what is the point of this? Like what are you trying to get out of meditation? It's like the point of meditation is like
Right.
dancing to me. It's like I do it because I like it. And if you try to get something out of something, like when you're reading a book, if you're trying to look for that piece of insight, you'll never find the insight. And that comes into letting go and attachment, and to like, that's really what I've been trying to work on this year, is like looking closely at like that feeling, right? That feeling of lack is what I've been seeing it pop up more in my life, of like, oh, nobody loves me. I'm just sitting here and everybody has an issue with me and I'm the asshole. And it's like, really, is that really how it is? Like this is it's everybody else's issue. It's not you. So when you start kind
Yeah.
of unveiling that, I've been looking closely at those feelings of like, instead of pushing it away and numbing it with things, which I've done enough of this year, it's more of like really staring at it in the face now and saying, well, why? And asking those harder questions, and really sitting off the phone, sitting off of technology, and just really sitting with my thoughts. Like tonight, Fridays, I spend 6 hours by myself in the room, just really like meditating, but also like asking those questions, like why, had a review of my week. And sometimes it gets a little too dark if you're not in the
Hmm.
right mindset. But for me, it's been like my anchor, and I love it. Like I canceled a day tonight just because I was like, I need this tonight. Like I just need that kind of weekly review of what's going on. Because when you start understanding like that, I think that's so subconscious for us, is like that first way you think of how you look at people. And for me, I realize it's very negative. I'm like, oh, that's not a good way to be. Like, even if it's, oh, it makes you quick and it makes you witty and it makes you never get, the rug pulled over your eyes, there's always an implication to it. So maybe that's too much of a pessimistic view, or too much of a, just a view of like expecting the worst from people in a way that I don't think is that healthy. So that's kind of what I've been unraveling with.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It is. And yeah. It's funny how that went from fitness into meditation, and you could see that whole question of, there's this could change. I mean, yeah, getting that first taste of something could change, and I wish I had more of that with regard to fitness specifically. I've had a little bit, but yeah, I mean, really for me, I got to the point where I could sort of, down, part of me still believes I'm a pudgy kid. I'm like, if I take that work like you're describing, if I'm quiet with myself and I look in that direction, I'm like, oh yeah, I still see that. That's totally still there. But I do have another viewpoint, and that viewpoint kind of grew in after I went to after college, where I went to France. Like I went to this 5-week trip to France, and France is a strange place because it has wonderful food, and yet I lost so much weight there because I was wandering around. I was walking around for 5 weeks and doing all this other stuff, and not eating the quantity of food. And then I went to field camp in 2000 and, and lost another, however much weight. Cause all I was doing was I was just out on the rock with my mat board, all day for 6 weeks. It was a beautiful thing.
Mm.
And I've never really gone all the way back. So now I'm like, I'm 190, I'm 6'4". I'm probably not actually overweight, but that voice is still there. That picture is still there.
Well,
Um,
I'm with you, and
yeah,
that's that for me. That's like it's so funny. Like this girl called me before, and we're in the gym, and we are talking about it. And she was like, "How you looking?" I'm like, "I don't like talking about it because like I think I like this body dysmorphia thing." And you're always going back to that old person. Even like you're clearly a skinny guy. I'm clearly a fit guy. It's just that mind shift. And even in the gym now, that's why like I used to the podcast was so heavily. I was trying to get deeper into fitness, and for me, like I saw you need balance of everything. So for me, it's about understanding where you're at and having that awareness that and almost like you're changing the character, right? You're going back from that old chubby kid and like bring it back to like reality. Like no, you're not quite there, and that's why for me, I thought the union of the mind, body, and spirit was such an important thing, and I thought maybe when I started it, fitness was maybe more important. And then when you go through a personal development stage, like you're listening to Tony Robbins, and I'm hitting my goals and I'm making money. It's like yeah, it's your mind, and then you kind of lean more on spirituality when you realize that you're going to keep trying to fill a never-ending bucket. And now I'm
yeah,
realizing like it's really a balance of these three things. Like they're equally important. You
that's a
need to
treadmill
get
that
up,
never
move
ends.
around. Yeah, it's never ending. And that physiology is important just because fitness, not saying you need to be like me and be 2 hours in the gym, 3 hours in the gym, but take a walk and keep yourself healthy. But your thoughts are so important, and that mind piece and what how you talk to yourself is so important. But then also the people you surround yourself with are so important because you don't like. I just started realizing that too. Like I'm around a lot of people that really aren't at the same energy as me anymore, and I'm outgrowing this whole Brooklyn thing and this whole let's go out and get girls, and it's about kind of showing off and like I'm realizing the quality of the people that you surround yourself
Sure.
with. Like even like I have like this chart of my days, and every time Mondays and Fridays are the best days of the week. And I go, oh, why? Oh, because I'm podcasting, because I'm talking to people that are like-minded individuals that are just maybe a little bit on a different, unique path of mine, but we're all kind of similar in a way that we're able to talk about it and able to like discuss these
Yeah.
things more on a higher level. That it's just it's really cool. So if I would tell everybody, you got to do a little bit of everything. You have to kind of wake up in the morning, stay off the phone, sit with your thoughts, call it whatever you'd like, introspection, meditation. Like I can't say meditation to my little 18-year-old cousins. Like what is that gay shit? It's
Yeah.
like, all right, guys, sit and journal, whatever it works for you. Do that. Wake, take a walk, get the blood flowing a little bit, get some serotonin pumping, eat right, sleep right, and you'll solve 80% of your issues just by doing that stuff. But people don't make money off that. People want to coach you and hit all these things. And I as a person who's had coaches, it's like
Sure.
there's always going to be something. Like we're saying, that's why I try to be very authentic in what I speak about because it doesn't really match the outside person. Because when I'm around people, there's that great Scott that comes into it. So when I'm here, it's like, oh, this is the real me. This is the most authentic me, and it's in this world it's easy to kind of take advantage of the psychology of a mind. And when people have the whole, right, we all have the whole, it's easy. But when I say that to
Yeah.
somebody, like, oh, you have suffering, it's okay, that's what the Buddha said, it's there, and now it's about mitigating that, and that's it. And
Yeah.
for me, going through this process has been such like an enlightening thing because you see the good and the bad of the podcast world, the people who want to sell you something, the people who want to do this, and it's like we don't do any of that. We're on my show, it's just more like here's what works for me, this is it, and let's just try to figure it out together.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That is one of the attractive things about your show for sure. Yeah. 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 That's a fascinating. I mean that aspect of spirituality because that's um the whole Buddhism's attitude towards suffering versus Catholicism, Catholic Christianity's attitude towards suffering. It's easy to take a superficial look at them and say they're opposed. But I think the truth is more subtle than that. There's a lot. I think Catholicism recognizes there's a lot of suffering that we inflict on ourselves needlessly. If
Exactly.
you get deep enough into the mystics, they would recognize what was talking about in terms of, yeah, I don't need all this stuff, all of these things that I chase off after in the world, making a great show of things like you're talking about, that lifestyle that you're sort of, summing up there. Um, going out and being seen, having, sex, having, being seen with the right people, all of that, wearing the right things, all that sort of thing, living in the right neighborhood. all of that stuff. I mean, that by itself is a treadmill, and that's a treadmill to nowhere. Um,
Exactly.
you can just keep feeding that and get more and more anxious about that and never have enough. I mean, Donald Trump probably does not think that he has enough. But how could that? How could that possibly be the answer?
Yeah. No, and this, even if you want, because when you're like a guy like me who's very, you know, go go go, even like you can get to on your high horse with the spirituality. So you end up trading the chain of gold for the chain for the beads. It's like it's the same thing. Like you're trying to show off how spiritual. It's like, yo, just let go of this shit. Because I
Yeah.
personally think Jesus, the Buddha, all of them were trying to say similar things. And it's about being humble, having perspective. The main kind of those needs of what we need. We need physiological needs. We need love and belonging. We need safety and security, and we need a little bit of self-esteem. Like those are the key components of what we're trying to those glasses that we're trying to fill. So even connection has been such a big thing in my life of just being able to help people on a everyday basis. When you get these emails and you're just I get sad at how easy it is to make a young 18-year-old man happy just by giving a little pep talk like that. That's really because I feel like, for me, that's all I want too. We all kind
Mhm.
of want that as men, just like, you're all right. And, somebody's here to kind of help you. And, some people find that or numb that
Yeah.
feeling and just don't look at it. And when you start becoming more aware of these things, just talking about this stuff, because I think all the podcasts in our space are integral to like dropping little tablets and ponds where you're raising the consciousness of it and making it okay to talk about your feelings, making it okay to say, listen, I went through some shit and it's okay to feel this way. It's not that you all have to be the cool kid
Yeah.
and you're all with the coolest cool and all that stuff. It just it gets tiring after a while.
Yeah. 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 Keeping up that facade, which, I was never very good at at all in the first place. But yeah, I can only imagine from the outside how hard it is to actually like keep those balls in the air and keep the whole thing, from being caving in on one side or the other. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. And I
It's funny
think
how we come from different directions and yet, yeah.
yeah, no, and it's yeah, that's why I always think we got along because it's all the some most men who feel this way, like the path is all different, but the feelings are the same. And at the essence of it, like that's what I love about people. People always ask me, why do people like so much? I'm like, I don't care about what you do. I don't care about where you come from. It's like, who are you? Like, and even language tends to make it muddled. But like for me, it's fair. Like I think in a previous life, I was like a shaman and I could just see people's kind of spirit or their soul or something. And it's just like, it's fun to me when you start. Jesus said, um, be in the world but not of it, right? And that's the way I kind of take the approach. It's like, yeah, I do the material stuff and I'm playing this game. It's more like life's just a game to me. And for me, when I'm acting that way, everything is a little easier because I'm taking it. I'm not as stressful. I'm not as like loose. And maybe that's a little piece for people to take approach. Like look at it like a game. Like, yeah, maybe there is no way to be completely authentic because you just can't. And that's all right. Like, hey, we're trying our best and you can keep talking about it. But like for the most part, we don't really know what we're doing. Like, I don't know I'm just kind of winging it. And, it's fun when you're, like you can take stuff lightly because I think my day job has put me in a very particular situation where I'm dealing with billionaires every day, and you're able to like you see a guy taking it so seriously. Like I need this. Like this one guy was telling me he was mad that he was worth, like you were talking about Donald Trump. This dude very loves Trump and all that stuff. They're friends, and he was worth, let's say, $3 to $4 billion, and he was mad that his friend is worth $5 to $6 billion. And
Mhm.
it's like, all right, well, clearly it does. The money will never make you happy because it's the mind. Because this is the same guy that,
No.
yeah, it just doesn't matter. It's always something else. And even his friend who was happy about that, another client of mine, he was thinking somebody's going to steal his money from a physical view. So what do? We gave him chief security officers, guys from the Secret Service. Then he said, well, no, they're going to steal it digitally. So it's just like, oh, you will just keep going and going until if you don't like get to it. And that's when, I would say even now, like understanding, like you have to get down deeper because if you get all the money, if you get all the women, if you get all of that and you're still worried about something, like what is the point? Like you just might as well not even try if you can't really figure out the source of it. So I'm learning more and more the spirit is the foundation of it and then the essence of yourself being in congruity with how you view it. And also just taking that approach of like the glass is half full. You have to view it that way, even though it may not be the reality that you're living in today. You have to live that way because that living the other way is nihilism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's chasing after nothing, and it will prove itself as such. Sooner rather than later in most cases. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That life. Yeah, the life is a game. I mean, it's certainly the point of it must not be that we do exactly the right thing every day. The perfectionistic trap, like that must not be the point, because none of us are given a manual to tell us exactly what to do, how to walk through life and do it all exactly right. Um, yeah, accepting that that's, of course that's not the point. Of course I'm going to have to learn through trying, finding out, oh, this isn't the optimal outcome. I guess I'll see if I can do anything better. But yeah, and taking it less seriously, because yeah,
Yeah.
it's so easy to go to one or the other extreme. Yeah.
And that's kind of how we were programmed, right? Black and white. But there's so much gray to this, and like that yin and yang is always a thing that I balance with, because for me, I'm either like super regimented. Today I'm on my shit, perfect, no gambling, no vices, or I'm just out of control. And that is part of the character that people even impress on me of like, well, why do you even have to be that way? But when you start digging deeper, it's like there's the yin implies the yang, the black implies the white, and I think all of it is this balance of the being and doing. And for people like myself, the doing is relatively easy. Like you're like, Scott, make $1,000,000. It's like, all right, let's go make $1,000,000. We'll figure it out. But that having peace is just incredibly difficult. And for me, understanding that you need both, and you need to be able to balance this. Like the Jesuits would always even pre-Bible, they would talk about it being the God of mercy and the God of justice. You need to have both of those hands, and you need to be able to balance both of those beings. And now it's turned into the yin and yang and the being and doing. It's all the same thing of these two pieces, that animal part of you and that divine part of you. And it's about being able to mend both of those. And Carl Jung's been a big influence on me, and that integration of the soul. It's hard because when you're, I want to be unique, I want to be cool, I want to, okay, and then you get it. But what implies unique? That implies that
Mhm.
you're on the path of uniqueness alone, basically. So there's just implications to everything when you start really
Yeah.
realizing it's like, maybe I don't want to be as unique as I thought I wanted to be. So there is kind of, you talk out of both sides of your mouth.
No. No. Yeah. 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 Uniqueness is a curse that we it's our you can't unhave an insight, someone said in the 20th century. And you turn around once you've realized that uniqueness is not all it's cut out to be. It's like, how did we ever let ourselves get sold this bill of goods? How did we ever decide, like, being the only one on this path, so there's no one to help me? How did that ever sound attractive? That's yeah. I mean, that's another aspect of things being a game, and talking about, yeah. I mean, your idea of the 18-year-old with the pep talk. Gosh, yeah, to be able to go back in time and have that myself, because I felt like I had to have all the answers. I knew I didn't on some level, but I felt like I had to pretend. Um, yeah, and to know that it's a game. Perfection is not even an option. Don't worry about it. Just try to do better today.
Yep.
And the consequences are not that serious. I mean, there are consequences. It's worthwhile living. I mean, you can go too far the other direction that everything's pointless
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter what I do. But yeah, there's a golden mean in there somewhere where, like, there's room to try.
Absolutely. 'Cause, yeah, exactly. And like that's the fun part of, like, when you really figure out your values. And I would say on a basic level, there's a couple people, like some people like certainty, some people like uncertainty, some people like growth, some people like love, some people like contribution. I love uncertainty. Uncertainty would be variety.
Mm,
Like if I got everything I wanted, if any of us got everything we wanted, then that's, if somebody give you, the genie came here and gave you the three wishes, then you told them there's no excitement, there's no vigor. You would get bored of it, and then that's basically the pet, like the future. Your selected future is the past then. So then you're just taking out the fun of it. So even I'm getting the tattoo tomorrow of "this too shall pass," of just understanding that everything is really impermanent in a way, and that's another Buddhist thing of just accepting that,
yeah,
and like really enjoying the highs as much as you enjoy the lows, and being able to there's just this balance going on, because I kept trying. I think people look at life like it's a stock market. It's up and down. It's not really how it works. It's almost like fourth dimensional, where you're like, I have an aim. It's somebody I want to be. And I think it's here. And then like doing comedy, like I like comedy. It's fun. It's cool. It's like exploration of the self-awareness. Cause you don't even realize the way people view you. I had no idea. I literally had no idea how the world viewed me until I did comedy. Until the owner and people, well, you should, did you know like you're a good looking guy and like you're the cool guy? I was like, me? I'm the cool guy? Like what the like who the fuck told me that? So it's this whole it's like I had no clue. And especially with comedians, they're all they're the craziest people in the world. So like and they're all
Yeah.
messed up. So it's just very funny that it's so like
Yeah.
perception is such a difficult thing because I'm perceiving Paul perceiving me. Is that even like possible? And then you're two in your head. So it's more, that brings in the eternal present
Yeah.
moment and Eckhart Tolle and, all that great stuff. Because that balance of the past, going back, digging into the past and understanding where the trauma came from. Then you have the present of being eternal mindful. And then you have the future, which is a constant bartering with you and the future version of yourselves. It's a lot to fucking deal with, right? But that's what you kind of need to do to optimize it. So people who say, you need to, it's no joke, Paul. So and people want to say it's just about being the present. But if you're all in the present, then maybe you're, it's just you have to learn how to balance. And even for me, that's been a struggle because, you go back too much and you end up getting yourself too manic, and then you worry about the future too much, and you're stuck on the end of the goal, and then you're in the moment too much, and then you're not getting shit done. It's like this constant back and forth. It gets tiring.
Yeah. 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 It is. It's, I mean, that's the game in some way. It's like, what is the point where I am actively, of course, because you can't oh, here it is. I'm going to dial this in. I'm going to be right here at the balance point, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's absolutely not how it's going to work.
Doesn't work. You can't.
You keep getting whacked. Yeah. Yeah. But that, learning how to ride that bicycle, so to speak, of, like, yeah, okay, no, if I do this, I'm going to fall off. And if I do this, I'm going to fall off the other end. Yeah. So this is coming in. How do I, deal with it? How do I judo it into, being a part of my life as opposed to this obstacle that I can't overcome? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting. That's the thing. If I can get around to the point, where I'm like, you know what? All the challenges I'm going to face today, they're just, this is the game I get to play today. I mean, that's what I guess maybe what I'll take away from this conversation. Not that I'll take multiple things away from this conversation, but I really appreciate that today.
No, I'm going to look at that way too, because that just gave me a sense of ease when you said like, oh, this is like a little game. Me and Paul are playing a game, just trying to help people out. And then, because I always, you get so for me, it's hard to change the character. Because like I was telling Paul, I was on a call right before this. I was like, you're going from, I'm talking to a billionaire to now and like, I've accepted that it's all me. But it's hard sometimes because it's like then you're losing your freaking mind. There's these multiple personalities, but it is all us. It's all that integration of it. And at the end of it, I think it's always better to do the work because you're going to get an insight at least. And, for me, I'd rather be conscious and be struggling maybe a little bit more instead of being ignorant,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. We could continue this for a long time, but unfortunately we both have time constraints today. So this is great, Scott. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and look forward to listening to the conversations you continue to have over at Causing the Effect. And yeah, we'll see what we can do together in the future, I hope.
Of course, Paul. Dude, thank you so much, man. You're one of the real ones, and I appreciate it. And everybody go listen to episode 221. It dropped, it dropped it's what month we in? We're in August. It dropped August 18th, but Paul was very willing to. I've gotten great feedback on that one. One of the best episodes of the year so far, and Paul was very open, and people seem to love his story. So just thank you, Paul, for everything, man.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Yeah. So definitely go back and listen to that, and many other episodes as well while you're there. So thank you so much, Scott. We'll talk again soon. So that was Scott Gazzoli on Causing the Effect. That was a really fun episode to do. We really, honestly, probably had an even better time on his podcast, so definitely go over to his podcast and check out that episode. And if you like what's going on That So Second Millennium, or for that matter, if you like what's going on with Scott's Causing the Effect podcast, be sure to rate us on Apple, on Google. It really helps steer people toward our podcast. And we hope you have a blessed day. Take care, be peaceful, and we'll talk again soon.